we're going to do an introduction. We're just going live now, so we'll give it a few seconds, I think. So the book, I'm not going to summarize it for the author, but in a one-line summary, it's a journey into beat culture of the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's as long as you like kind of thing. And it's on Velocity Press. You can get your copy, but we'll shout that out again very, very shortly. Should we do a round, or do you think it's too soon, Laurent?
Let's do a round of work.
Let's do a round of introductions.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
So I'll start. So my name's Jamie, Agent Jay. I'm a DJ in Manchester, and I host a show on Reform Radio. So shouts to Reform, Mecha83 dropped in the chat. Shouts to Mecha83. We'll talk to you later. And I'm in Manchester, so we're going global tonight. Laurent, author of the book, over to you. Where are you, and who are you?
My name is Laurent Fintoni, and I'm the author of the book that we're celebrating tonight. And I'm currently in Italy after living in LA for the last 3 years. And then to my left, right, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
It's the opposite of what you think.
I got it.
Good stuff. I am Venice, also known as VJ, and I make music as Pursuit Grooves. I am broadcasting from Toronto. I've been here for quite a while. Before that, I was in New York City for 10 years, originally from PG County, Maryland, right outside of DC. And beat maker, producer, the whole electronic beat spectrum, DJ, and looking forward to our chat.
Thank you very much. We'll go over to Los Angeles.
Well, I'm Dibiase. I'm a producer, beat maker. I'm from LA, Watts, California, originally. Been stationed out of Sacramento for 10 years now. And I'm just, that's pretty much it.
And finally, we have
Jay Scarlett of the UK, now living in Munich
for
the last 20 years.
Your mic's bugging
Jay,
out
I'm
again.
sorry, your fuzz has come back. your mic fuzz has come back. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Try a replug. It was so crisp in rehearsal, actually, at the end.
It always happens.
No.
Standard.
Any better?
Still a robot.
Oh. Hang on.
All right, we'll hold off for Jay.
Okay, we'll come back to Jay Scarlett very, very soon.
But anyways, we're here for this celebration.
Any better?
No.
Okay. Let's continue.
Sorry, Jay.
All right. Well, that's Jay Scarlett.
Yeah, you go for it.
Who's originally from London, currently in Munich, and is a great DJ and a compiler and supporter of beat culture, I think, and probably one of the reasons, in fact, while at least the four of us are here today, I think we all have various relations with him, and Jay's just somebody who's been super supportive and was behind one of the most important compilations that came out in the 2000s that kind of kickstarted this movement.
Thank you.
Is the mic working? No, still. Oh, still better? No.
No.
It's still crazy fuzzy. It was clear earlier on.
Oh, man.
Maybe even without, maybe just straight to the laptop or computer.
You want to try the laptop? You want to try the laptop,
Mike?
I'll join again. I'll log down and join again. Let's see, guys.
All right. Okay. The other thing that I didn't mention, but Jay was also involved with SpaceX, who are also super important. He was a tour DJ, which I believe is how you met him, Venice, right?
Yep. I was in Amsterdam in 2006 on vacay, and I was going to a show at Paradiso, and it was Rich Medina, Jay Davy, and SpaceX. And I had some demos, had some CD demos on me. And I saw Jay standing in the corner, and you know, I took the opportunity, slid him a CD with some beats on there, which ended up being like my first self-release, Fun Like Passion. And he ended up taking one of those tracks and putting it on the Beat Dimensions compilation, Volume 1.
Dope.
Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, everything kind of snowballed from then. I mean, that was just a great time, you know.
Right.
It was a huge international community going on then, you know. So like I said, like at that time I was living in New York, but I was really involved with MySpace and meeting a lot of fellow producers on MySpace. And, you know, we were all kind of into the same vibes, but we were all over the place. So it was really cool to have a chance to meet people in person. And yeah, it just kind of all snowballed from there. And then, yeah, Red Bull 2 years later. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy that you mentioned the Beat Dimension compilation. I kind of second guessed myself. I was supposed to submit something for it. Fudge was telling me, yeah, I was second guessing myself during that time, and a few of the homies was like, "Man, you better turn it in." And I didn't turn nothing in because I just didn't think my stuff was ready at the time. And
were you on the second one? I can't remember.
no, I wasn't on.
No. Okay.
It was one of the compilations I was supposed to submit for, but
right.
Yeah,
but at that time, were you doing the beat battles back then?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of beat battles. And,
That's right.
It's in the circuit pretty much, and then I applied for the Red Bull Academy, but I didn't get that. But I made the Red Bull Big Tune beat battles.
Right.
08.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the first time I applied to Red Bull, I didn't get in either. 2006 was in Melbourne. Next year was in Toronto. 2007, and I'm just like, Toronto's too close. 2008 was in Barcelona. I'm like, all right, let me shoot my shot again. And that was ace.
Yeah, it's a mission though. The applications, it was like a mission.
Hello, Jay. Welcome back.
Oh, is that working now for you guys?
Yay!
Yeah, we've been talking about beat dimensions, and you're still waiting for a track submission from Dibiase, I believe.
Yeah, I am actually. It's a bit late.
Yeah, I was second guessing myself back then. I was telling people like Fudge was telling me to get on the go to send the track in, but
now I know how it goes. You know what? I reached out to so many people, and who came at the end of the day. And you know how it goes with releasing a record. You always have to try to get it together as quickly as possible. So it was like anyone that didn't get on there, it wasn't like anything personal. It was just like, okay, that was the deadline, and we had to fulfill it. So
I know.
But obviously, we missed you.
Oh man.
Well,
we're still in the working out of Volume 3, aren't we?
Yeah, well, it was funny that you said that, because I did put that forward to, well, obviously not Christian, because he had left Rush Hour, and then Antel more or less took on the branch, and we were going for a Volume 3, you know, but it just never really happened. And I spoke to a guy in London who actually put the idea forward, really, and he wanted to release it on Sounds of the Universe, but then I couldn't get any... I couldn't use the name Beat Dimensions, basically, so it wasn't going to really happen on that format. So there you go. Yeah.
So we'll circle back to the actual theme, introduce the book actually properly in a minute.
Sure.
But this is obviously such a heavy part of what we're talking about tonight, and tonight's obviously a celebration of the book, but it's also a wider conversation about beat culture, because in 350 words, I'm sure we all know that Laurent couldn't fit the whole history of music in that, despite trying to. But did it feel like a magic time? 2005. Vanessa, you just talked about you meeting SpaceX and that kind of time of Beat Dimensions, which I think came out 2007, but 2005, 2006 would have been
the compiling.
So did you feel the pressure of like, I need to get this out before someone else does?
Well, not really. I don't think we were so eager somehow, because somehow we just felt like the window was open anyway, and no one else was talking about any specific plans at the time, you know, and I was buying a lot of music also at the time. And the things that were, you know, were kind of coming to mind were a lot that was coming out of LA Pooh Records, you know, Sound of LA. There were a few things coming out of France, a few things coming out of Sweden through Matt's label. Obviously, Bass Mentality came out, you know, so a couple of years before or so. But, you know, there wasn't really like, no one was really picking up on it, you know. So, and I guess my idea was obviously through the traveling of it all was just to put as many faces and continents on the map at the same time, a bit as Mo Wax did, you know, with Heads, for instance, you know, DJ Shadow, Crush from Japan, you know, they had RPM 2000 on there, Joe and Kwame, you know, they had the Prunes, you know, from the Danish production company. So, you know, it was really like an international compilation. And in the sense of bringing that together, that's what we wanted to do. So I just kind of used my, you know, my web of information, and obviously MySpace at the time really helped to connect that somehow. Do you know what I mean? Because you could really just jump from page to page and country to country and really just reach out to people. And then it was obviously a time of innocence because no one was really so overprotective about their material. So I had the full reign of, you know, of territories basically to choose from. It's great.
You know what's funny is you mentioned the Sound of LA, and I think like that's the thing, right? It's like 2005 is that Bass Mentality compilation, which is arguably like the first one to really do this kind of idea, because it was like Benji B wrote the liner notes, and it was all about like beats, like it was like beats for the club, but it wasn't like Dilla was on there and a bunch of other people. But then Carlos did the Sound of LA in 2006, which was all around the sketchbook scene that DB was a part of. Yeah. But when I spoke to Carlos, he was like, he basically made the argument that he was inspired by London and he was inspired by Digo and 2000 Black. Yeah. And the way that in the first half of the 2000, London was doing, there was all these records coming out of London. There was kind of like compilations of people just making beats, you know, whether it was like stuff that was happening in what became Broken Beat or whatever. But I think it's super interesting how like everybody's always looking at like everybody else in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as a collector, obviously I had collections from different, you know, territories, you know, from France, from Sweden, you know. One thing I wanted to kind of mention as well, that Trevor Jackson didn't really get a little line in your book. And I think that he's one underdog is definitely one dude who should have been in there. Because for me personally, coming into that whole era just before Mo Wax, like Trevor Jackson was doing, you know, before the playgroup thing, he was doing the underdog productions, and that shit was just out there for me. So that was one of the main reasons somehow that kind of took me into that headspace of, because I was just listening to the Attic tapes 1 to, I don't know, 8 or whatever, just constantly at home. So underdog Trevor Jackson, he's a bad boy.
I apologize. You know, I mean, there's the thing. There's so many people to mention. You know, that's the thing about the book. It was really difficult to think about, like, how do you? There's so many people that, I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. And then
this is volume 1, right? Lauren?
What's that?
This is volume 1, though, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
10 more years for the next one.
Exactly. Another 10 years, and then another one will come out.
Yeah, that's the cycle, right?
Exactly.
Well, just to reintroduce for those people that have just joined us a bit later. So this is the book launch for Bedroom Beats and B-Sides. And when, I don't know, Laurent, when we first met, probably about 10 years ago, you mentioned the book. And then kind of lo and behold, we're here now. But I think there was a bit of an impetus for you to get the book finished, and the book is dedicated to someone. If you'd like to talk about that person.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so the book's dedicated to Ross G, who sadly left us last year.
Rest in peace.
And yeah, G was, I mean, anybody I think who met G will testify that he was a character and a half, and he was just a really good person. And he was one of the first people that I interviewed for the book. I interviewed him various times over the last 10 years. Then when I moved to LA, we hung out around mainly in Europe a bunch of times. Then when I moved to LA, spent some time with him, and I think it's like 4 years ago, I did a tour of Le Meurthe with him. That was super dope. Where like he took me around, and then I was actually writing one of the chapters of the book last summer, and then the news, like I woke up on Monday and it was like somebody was like, "Yo," and you know, I mean, I'm sure DB like it must have been the same for you. It's just like you wake up and it's like, what?
Yeah,
Crazy.
it's not real. This is not real.
Okay. Exactly.
Just make the calls.
So yeah, I wanted to dedicate the book to him because I know that I know that he understood what it meant to put that history out there. I think I told you this, DB. Like, he was a historian. Do you know what I mean? Like, he cared about that shit.
He was a soldier in that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I known G since high school. So we went to high school together. His class was across from my homeroom, and one of the teachers used to teach mixing, and Raj G was like a sound man during the lunchtime assemblies when they had like some talent show for people who rhyme it. It was like a lot of MCs at the time, so he was running the mixing board. But it's funny, Raj G, he was kind of like the sound man's nightmare for blowing up sound. So it's like,
Yeah.
he would always say, "I'm trying to destroy the speakers tonight before."
That's true. But he started like handling the speakers.
Yeah, man.
One time we were talking about, just before broadcast, we were talking about Ilmsphere. Shout out to Ilmsphere. But he was at the airport in LA with him. Johnny and Ryan went over to LA, and he said he opened the laptop and the air horn just came out in the passenger lounge. That kind of sums him up, I thought.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tony from Attica Blues who's in the chat
I was
apparently.
just
big
about to
shout,
say,
Tony.
what's up, Watch? I see you.
The whack.
But actually, DB, tell us about Project Blowed, because I think that's a really important part of the story for LA that doesn't necessarily I think they know about Blowed and The Good Life for rap, but talk about like the importance for like producers.
Well, the producer thing started at Good Life, actually. I was buying some of my first beat tapes at Good Life, like from DJ Nobody. He was having beat tapes, and DJ Fat Jack. They would play beats from the DAT machine back at Good Life. So like, then once Project Blow came around, it was like more producers coming with their boombox. Like Davius Beck, he was going by Adlib at the time, part of Global Flotations. And then Subtitle, Giovanni Marks, he was doing some crazy production during that time. It was like sound like some company flow, West Coast company flow type stuff, like early 90s. So it was like just hearing that stuff inspired me. And then I say around 2005 was when they started having beat battles at Project Blowed, and then they would have like beat showcases there. So that was cool. And then
and he was a DJ there, right?
Yeah, Raj G, he was a resident. He was like the first playing like Slum Village up in there, and Cats was this is like 97, I would think. Yeah. So yeah, he's putting people up on stuff early, man. Around that time. So the production part of Project Blow, like a lot of people think it was just for rapping, but a lot of it's like half and half. Around 2006, started getting half and half with production and MCing. So that was pretty much.
We just
lost Vanessa.
She's back.
Back.
He seems from a kind of like listener's point of view, and from what we could see of him kind of over here before I met Rod, he seemed, maybe someone that might be quite aloof or quite kind of like on a different cosmic kind of level, but actually he seems to be someone who brought someone together and one of like an extremely nurturing person.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like when a lot of people would come in town or first come to LA, they would link up with G, like Doc M. When Doc M first came to LA, we invited him to Project Blow, and we all took him under the wing and just, give cats the red carpet. John Robinson and Stacey Epps, when they first came to LA, they came to the Blow. I think he DJ'd for them a little bit too.
Wow.
So it's like, yeah, he looked out for so many people pretty much.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he was like the glue. That's the way that I put it in the book. You know, he was like, it wasn't until he was gone that you were like, damn, like he really, everybody kind of connected through G in some way or another.
True.
Especially in LA where like it's so spread out. People, you know how it is, like people don't really understand it, and you have to go to LA to really get it. It's like from the outside you think that LA is this one thing where all these people are together, but it's not at all like that. Unlike, I don't know, like London is big, but like in London there's maybe things are a little bit more cohesive or whatever. But in LA it's a lot more spread out, and G was like involved in so many things and everybody knew him. So yeah.
A recurring theme through the book is community and musical communities that come through. So for you three, how important have communities been in terms of maintaining relationships which have kind of fed into your kind of careers or what you've achieved? How important has that community aspect been?
Community has been a huge part of 2010s, the late 2000s, like that whole, I'll put it like this. There were a number of events around the world where like go-to spots. Like you knew Manchester, you knew
We've just
what
lost
happened
you,
in
Joseph.
Glasgow, you know.
Oh, you're back.
Back?
Sorry, we lost
Am I
you.
here now?
We lost you for a few seconds. Sorry. You just repeat that last
Okay, it's
bit.
okay. I was saying that there was a scene in Manchester. There was a scene in Vienna. There was a scene in Besançon, France. If I said that correctly. There was a scene in Glasgow. There was a scene in Japan. Like there were scenes all over, so that like there were like places that you would hit if you were touring in Europe. And I think a lot of folks met on MySpace. And also like, you know, after RBMA, like everybody in my term, I mean, you know, we would invite each other to each other's cities for events, which was dope. You know what I mean? Like I stayed in Europe for an extra month after that. I did a number of dates with Anra. I mean, we were homies before we even did RBMA, which was totally dope that we even got into the same term. And like a lot of those relationships, like I said, like I would run into a lot of other folks that I admired when we'd get booked for the same festivals or different shows, you know. So to me, the whole beat scene community was totally global. It was international. It wasn't just one city. And even for me, you know, I was living in Brooklyn. I was living in New York City. And it was great to see people come through, you know, like I said, you know, like Sarah and Jay Davy. And even when there was like Beat Society, when they would do shows in New York, like that was lit. But for me, I was still paying attention to more of what was going on in Europe and more of the producers that were popping in Europe, whether they were more underground or you know, bigger electronic known acts. But and even for me, I was getting more gigs and making more connections with folks in Europe. I think also just because like the type of beats I was making was hip hop, but also broken beat, you know. So in Europe, I think they're a bit more open and receptive to the type of stuff that I was doing. So even though I was in New York, my scene wasn't New York. Like my scene was international. So it's a huge part.
And Jay, for you?
Yeah, I mean, the community has been a really big part of, you know, traveling, definitely going from place to place, going to Sweden to obviously do the Venus album launch back in 2006 with Up High, Pure P, meeting Erin Aid, meeting Fatima there for the first time, meeting Matt, meeting, you know, Aaron Fury, the whole Raw Fusion crew were over there. So, you know, just that whole team was just like amazing on the night of the launch. And then going to France, you know, meeting guys over there, going to Sofia, meeting guys over there, like going to Japan for this whole circulations release that we did for HMV. Onra was there, Source 81, just like everyone that I met along the way, basically, you could feel that they were all tuned in to what was happening in the moment. It was obviously a very immediate sense of community once the compilation had come out. So because I was obviously talking to a lot of the individuals, but also, from their teams as well. They were obviously contacting the main players that were on our comps and saying, hey, can you send this to Jay, or can you reach out to Jay and send him some material? So there was a point where, tapes or links were just coming in all the time, and I was just meeting like loads of individual people from different parts of, or different regions of their country somehow. So community is definitely a thing. The one line that they were always talking about was actually that they had to wait for certain times of the month to all come together, because obviously not everyone was putting on these jams. So it was like, in Toulouse, I think Fulgence, and then obviously Solence, with DJ Solis, they were doing obviously their thing in Toulouse. In London, there was very few parties going on at the time as well. There was one time I went over where we played with Hudson, Mike Slot, Paul White was there, Gene Besser, before he became Gene Besser. He was Tightface, I believe. And then, so that whole crew were hanging out as well. So I met them, in the pre-phase of what they're doing now on the label 5 Piece, Easy Pieces. But, so that you could just see that the communities were obviously growing internally in each city anyway. So, and obviously it was just nice to be a part of meeting these guys in reality, or even online, or having FaceTime conversations with them as we were going along. So yeah, community is definitely a big thing.
All that time there was never a special handshake. People just kind of like, this is the opportunity tonight to come up with a special handshake. But
MySpace was a special handshake.
Yeah,
that was it. That was it. That was Tom's.
Like, am I in the top 8?
Tom, yeah.
Special handshake.
I guess in terms of what I found interesting in community is in the terms that, in terms of terminology, and obviously people have needs to kind of categorize things. And again, in the book, you talk about how people try and. I did an interview with Flying Lotus about 10 years ago, and he was going mad about wonky. He's going, "Oh, you British," you say who defines it in the book, but he was saying, "No, you British guys came up with that," whatever sort of thing. But Pursuit Grooves, you, as Laurent kind of describes in the book, didn't want to. Let me find the quote out here. Actually, I've got the quote. Oh no, that's not the quote. But you talk about how you had quite a wide palette, I guess, of what you wanted to make. You didn't want to feel restricted in anything. And I guess some people might feel the opposite way, like they have to fit in to this kind of like post-Dilla kind of thing. So did you feel quite free all the way through your career in terms of what you could make?
I think the thing with me is that, like, I started out as an MC in high school, and I was rhyming over, 12-inch instrumentals. I was in a band with Substantial. And I think when I started university, I stopped MCing because I thought that in terms of making music, because I started making beats in high school, that it kind of limited me into a very hip hop or R&B vibe, and I was a fan of all different types of music. And if I was going to take myself seriously and like really express myself creatively, I didn't want to have any genres or limits put on me. And I think once upon a time, maybe early on, I may have had some feelings about it, because I think that people did want to have things fit in a certain genre or be able to name it. But I think now, in hindsight, 15, 20 years later, I'm able to do a hip hop beat album. I'm able to do a house broken beat album, and I'm able to do an experimental cinematic dub type album. And it's actually given me a lot more opportunities now as an older adult. And just for myself as a creative, it's given me a lot more room and a lot more longevity, a lot more opportunity. So I'm happy that I didn't get too caught up in trying to fit in to any particular thing, because it makes much more sense to me now.
Do you feel like all these things that you're doing now, like, do you feel that it's still all, I guess the argument that I make in the book sort of is this idea that, you know, people talk about the beat scene or whatever, but really it's like beat culture. That's really the thing for me. It's like, it's a culture. It's not, you know, it's not just this or that. It's much more like a rooting thing that like you can pull from whenever you need. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's something that it's a nerdy way for all of us to talk about what it means to make music, and to talk about other producers, and to talk about like instrumental music, and that kind of spans a lot of time and crosses genres. But I think like when I meet up with any other beat makers, automatically you're either going to start talking about gear, whether it's hardware, software, or you're going to talk about other producers that you think are dope, whether it's current or whether it's some years ago. You know, usually I'm talking about stuff from years ago. That's more of what it's about, or whether it's the radio shows we would listen to, or the magazines. Like, honestly, I miss the magazines. Like, that's how I used to get up on what everybody was doing, whether it was Herb, Accelerator, Fader, Straight No Chaser. You know what I mean? And like, actually, like one of my first internships in New York City was at Giant Step. You mentioned that in the book. Like, I interned there 3 months in the marketing department. You know, like it's amazing how, even though New York City seems like a big city, how all of these things are interconnected. You know, but to me, you know, like if we're talking beat scene, it is more of just like the topics that we all tend to fall into when we're, you know, talking about it.
Right.
Mr.
I mean, DB, that's something that
No, Laurent, you go ahead.
No. I've just triggered my theory by mistake. No, I was going to say, DB, that's something that I know you also like talk about a lot, and I know we've spoken about it, and with G as well. You know, that it's like, it's not about a genre, it's not about a tempo, it's not about a BPM. It goes deeper than that.
It's a feeling, pretty much. It's like it's funny you brought up Wonky. I had a funny story with Raj G and SF. Like, he saw both of our records in the Wonky section at Amoeba, and he was like, "Man, let me put this in the hip hop section real quick, man." I crack up every time when I hear the word Wonky. I think of that story. But yeah, man, he didn't like the labels. It's like, from being in South Central, they used to always, you know, think that we made a low rider music. That's what they were, the stereotypical gangster music. So it's like all kind of spectrums in Los Angeles at the time, from underground hip hop to the instrumentals, and so it's like we didn't pay attention to none of the boxes. So it's like, but you know, you get labeled the mad scientist and all that back in the day, but now it's accepted now. Like, people, like, they get attracted to that, like how we come up with them topics, talking about a lot of gear, different process of producing and all that stuff. It's like nerd talk to the average person, but amongst us, it's like a normal language. Like Flarlo was saying in that mini documentary. But yeah, that's pretty much.
Dibiase, you were a key figure in terms of. Well, tell us about the boombox. Tell us about the boombox and sketchbook, and Justin getting annoyed at you because you were outside with the boombox while he was DJing. Is that?
You weren't bad, because I would go in there and sketch too, inside while he playing the music. But I was already bringing the boombox everywhere to Project Glow. But
okay.
I was going to Sketchbook. Like, the first night I went, they were having a beat showcase, and it was the first time I seen people with their equipment on stage. It was like Fly Low, Take, Sacred, and Tarak.
Big shout out to Tom.
And I think Fly Low was using like a 505, and it was crazy, man. So I was like, damn, I want to bring my equipment there, but so I just started going every week since then, and then I was already bringing the boombox, and then I was just playing stuff, and then Ross G would have his stuff on the cassette in Sacred, and he would play whatever he made, and then the next following week, it was more people showing up with their beat CDs. Georgia would show up playing with some stuff hot off the press. Exile, pretty much Fly Low. He'll have like a beat tape for the whole month called July Heat, August Heat. And it's like, man. So it was like everybody would do their homework every week and just come back. And it's like a friendly competition. But, you know, we all building at the same time. And yeah, it just, before you know, it's like months going by every week. Everybody expected it. And yeah, that's pretty much that. I kept some of the beat CDs. I know Koopma got a lot of them too.
Big shout to Koopma at this point as well.
For sure.
Yeah, shout out to Justin. I mean, that's some gold. If you still have beat CDs from that era, that's like
yeah.
We need to put that in the Library of Congress.
I mean, that makes me think of CDR too. You know, shout out to CDR.
Tony and Gavin. Yeah,
Plastic People. Like, you know, I went once. I played there, and what a vibe, man! For sure.
Yeah, and I know that like Carlos Nino, who put the Sound of LA compilation, and the Sound of LA compilation kind of comes out of Sketchbook anyway, because it's all the people that were at Sketchbook.
Yeah, I got a story about that too. Yeah,
free up.
I didn't have my mix. Like my mix downs wasn't on point back then. It was kind of like the lo-fi stuff. Like the sound quality wasn't up to par, but it's accepted now. But
OG lo-fi though. OG lo-fi.
Yeah, OG lo-fi. So basically, that kind of prevented me getting on volume 1, but they were supposed to do a volume 3 and 4, and I was supposed to be on that one, but that one didn't drop.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, it was upstairs from Sketchbook where the Carlos Nino was setting up shop upstairs from Sketchbook.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and he was paying attention to CDO in London, I know, and so it's like, the ideas are all the same. Like it's just like it's community. It's what you were talking about. It's about community. I know. Georgia told me that she really loved Sketchbook because it was that sense of community and being able to come out of the bedroom as well, right? Like being able to come out of like because there wasn't a lot of places you could do that in LA at the time, or even in London. There was CDR was for that. Like it's like.
Yeah.
Was she actually ever turning up at some of the, Sketchbook nights, Georgia? Was she ever presented or play?
Yeah, she was. She was in attendance at Sketchbook, right?
Yeah, I don't think she played a set there, but she would bring CDs and give it to Koopma, and Koopma was in it. Like she'd be like, "I just made this tonight." It'll be the only time you hear that beat ever.
I think it was she left kind of like in 2006, so she was there for like a few months from what she told me.
Yeah.
It's right around the time that she did. I think she saying she came back from New York after she did the Worth Nothing EP, and then she went to Sketchbook. So it was like that whole era.
Yeah, her and Dudley.
Jay, how did you start to make those global connections? Obviously, you DJ'd and tour managed SpaceX.
I guess
you
that
kind
was
of piece together chronology a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think it was back in like 99. Taz from Sarah was over in London with his cousin from his cousin Kojo was there. I think he was managing him at the time. And then me, Steve, and Morgan went round to. At the time, he was living in a little apartment on Christchurch Road, just off of Streatham, Brixton Hill, around the back of Dulwich there, and he had a little studio set upstairs. So we were literally up there, and I remember getting this first, Sarah CD that everyone was buzzing around. Basically, he was literally sitting there while he was doing some tunes upstairs in the attic, and me, Jason Knight, Steve and Morgan, we were watching Rockers at the time in the background, and then he was in the studio. Then we popped in just to say hello to him, and then he said, "Oh, I've got something for you," and he gave us this, this CD with the first Sarah beats on there, with Glorious, Rosebuds, etc. And I think it was the same year that everyone was just buzzing about it, more or less. Once I got it that week, I think in the same month or two, Benji was playing, everyone was playing this Sarah CD that was going on. So, and that kind of really sparked the whole idea, actually, like just sitting there. I mean, Morgan was already burning CD stuff in the apartment. Yeah. But, like just to get onto that CDR vibe somehow was kind of really nice, because everywhere we turned up, producers were just giving us, stuff after we were hearing the first tracks from Eve. And because I was obviously DJing for Steve and Morgan as part of the enhanced tour for the Vintage High Tech project. So, and everywhere we generally turned up in the audience, people were just handing out these CDs to us, more or less. So that was kind of how the beginnings of, collecting the music, and just, coming back from the tour after Europe, basically, and just having bags worth of CDs and sitting there and listening to them and being like, oh, okay, this something should happen with this, because none of this stuff's actually out yet, right? So, and I think it wasn't until like 2 or 3 years later that the Sarah was released, I think, a couple of tracks in Japan through Jazzy Sports, and then on Ubiquity as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was
the thing about Sarah, as Laura mentions in the book, is they're obviously time travelers who came from the future, and people just weren't ready for them.
That's how the music was sounding. It literally was sounding like that, because like everything was just pumping through the speaker. So, so nicely contained, but like the hip hop was strong in it, like the synthetics, that was really for me like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to get into this a little more, because the production and the musicality in it as well, and just, the level of musicianship was just high. It was a high level CD. I thought, okay, that's finished product right there. Someone would have called it a premix or whatever, but that stuff was ready to put onto vinyl and play, so it was like, yeah, so that whole collecting of CDs through those various tours that we were on with Steve and Morgan were definitely like the first initiation to the compilation, which obviously then when I met Cinnamon, he was mentioning it, and as soon as he mentioned this idea of putting together this beat compilation, I mean, I already had the material more or less sitting there. We just did some extra research, obviously met Vanessa, met up with Honora, and then Byron, Aquarius and Honora were doing the big payback together. So I thought, okay, I can't get you both on the album, so why don't I just put you as a couple on there as the big payback, basically. So that's how that one happened. And then like guys like Simon Muskowski, who was part of the Boom Clap Bachelors from out of So it's just meeting up. Everything just kind of fell into place. There was no like real idea for the project, but obviously the idea of collecting all this music along the way was really the thing. The launch also for the Venus album in Sweden, Stockholm. The guys gave me some extra beats. Also Erin Haid as well. We brought us down to the studio, gave us some beats that Damon was working on in the studio, separate from Aaron, and then obviously Pure P and Busy gave us some stuff as well, and those ended up being on the compilation as well. So, it was just like the year of progressive touring. You just met this community as you were going along, and that's how you got the music, more or less. Because sometimes you couldn't see these people online. Some of them were even online, so you had to meet them in person to be able to bring that forward somehow. Yeah, it was an exciting time, I have to say.
Yeah. Shout out to CDs.
Benji B's show was really big too. Like I would always turn into Benji's show to see like what is he playing this week,
He had Youth Rich for sure.
He's on top of everything.
Big shout out to Andrew Meza, BTS Radio.
Yeah, radio.
BTS, Benji.
You still got the T-shirt, Dibiase?
Huh?
You still got the T-shirt?
Oh yeah, I still stickers, posters, all of that, man.
Everything.
It's kind of like there was like two levels, right? Because it's like Benji B and your Giles Peterson, and maybe
Yep.
like LA, like you had, people like I forget, like the people like Kissy RW and places like that, where there would be certain DJs that were, professional DJs or whatever. But then you had somebody like Andrew, who was, even though he was doing stuff at a college radio, he was much more like kind of, upcoming or whatever.
He was marketing all of that, right? I mean, Key doing all that. Key was doing the artwork for him, I guess, at the time.
No, that was
it was
Bill Lord,
French guy.
Charles Monka.
Monka,
Monka.
exactly, yeah. But who went under Key? No, QUE, I guess, as a side name.
That's his alias. But
so he was doing all of these, like caricatures for everyone.
Yeah.
And then Andrew was doing everything by himself. He was like doing the show out of like his college radio, but then he was like archiving it, putting it online, going on MySpace.
Yeah.
With people on MySpace. He was really, like, I'm trying to think. I think in his wake, definitely more people. It became more of a thing.
Was Dublab the same time?
What's that?
Yeah.
Was Dublab the same time?
Yeah, Dublab is
running
at that time. And then Dublab is like even a separate thing because Dublab is
running from time.
I mean, Dublab is like 99. So
Yeah, I see somebody shouted out Marianne Hobbs too.
Marianne Hobbs.
BBC.
But that's what I mean. You have this kind of like definitely like these different levels of radio DJs that all. I think Marianne Hobbs, I mentioned in the book, like she was, for me, it's like the Breeze Block is hugely important. For 10 years, she just got the BBC to let her play like weird beats live.
Yeah. True.
That's like with Benji, it's like you had that level of like BBC. I guess in the US there was never that level because it was all more like college radios and then local radios like in LA.
Yeah.
In LA they had like KCR. I mean the Beat Junkies, what the Beat Junkies were doing in the 90s and the 2000s, they were pushing mixing on the radio. And then, the thing I think with Andrew and BTS is like he would do interviews, and that was, I think, really dope.
Yeah, the mixes too.
Like, exactly.
Diego Black, Gennaro Jarrell.
Yeah. Digo. We had loads of guys on there, right? Yeah. So he was really representing the whole continent at the time. People that he was true.
He had a range.
Flylo.
Yeah.
And he was really plugged into MySpace. I think that's the thing that made BTS, I think, really connect with so many heads is that BTS, like you with Jay, the way that you use MySpace. It's like
Yeah, that's how I met Andrew anyway, because I mean we were doing, I think, one of the first or second mixes on the actual show. It was me and Cinnamon separately, and I did one of the first mixes on there as well. So, and then obviously I got to see Digo was on there, Jarrell was on there, So then he started to really build this thing for himself on BTS, and it was really nice because the whole marketing and the caricatures and it was like the branding of the t-shirts and stuff. It was great. I really enjoyed seeing that happen. It was a total level of professionalism somehow,
I think there's that big difference where it's like even the compilations were like before you did Big Dimensions, most of the compilations were like local comps, and then you did Big Dimensions, and then Olin, and then Puba was doing G, and Monk were doing stuff with Puba that was all like LA heads. And then all cities started doing stuff, and so you start to see
producer series. Fat City did producer series as well.
And then and then Manchester got.
That's
right.
Shouts to Danny Dorothy on the chat. Split 12 inch with Dibiase we talked about earlier.
Big up.
Shouts to Gennaro Jarrell as well, because Gennaro's been really poorly.
Yeah, JJ.
Yeah, he's been really ill the past few years, but he's back with a new album. So shouts to JJ.
Big shout.
Forward to that.
Big respect.
Vanessa, you talked about missing magazines earlier, and obviously we're talking about MySpace, and I missed the pressure of that top friends and all that sort of stuff, and what track I was going to have. I missed that pressure. What do you guys miss from, say, 10 years ago, whether it's in terms of community and places and clubs, or in terms of what the music was doing? What is so different now that you just don't have anymore? And what do you miss?
Yeah, I guess this sense of experimentalism somehow, instead of just going into these certain genres now, where I could walk into a club 10 years ago and people were literally playing drum and bass. Like, big shout out to DJ Explicit, Plastic Juggernauts here in Munich. You know, they were playing like UK garage, drum and bass, hip hop, weird beats, abstract hip hop, whatever, all in the same club night. You know, 4 DJs on turntables doing that from 10 till 6 in the morning. And I missed that vibe where I could just walk in and listen to any genre in the same room somehow. And now it's really all it's become more segmented somehow. So, you know, disco heads ain't going to techno clubs ain't going to hip hop clubs, and blah blah blah. And when I came in 2002, 2004, 2005, that was still happening here in this city. I don't know how it was going on in London, because obviously I'd left at 2003. So yeah, but I'm missing that openness to music, and hopefully that's what's going to come back once all of this COVID stuff dies down, that people are opening back up for bringing more vibes into their nights again, you know.
Yeah. Now, speaking of drum and bass, Daddy Kev used to do a spot in '99 called Concrete Jungle.
Oh, nice.
He used to go there. That's before Low End, of course, and it was, I think RAW was a resident as well, and but they would have cats like Micah 9 freestyling over drum and bass. So that was a cool thing to see. So that was the first form of instrumental type beats I was hearing before, like some beats, like a whole night full of beats. So that was cool to see. But
yeah, low end. I mean, DB, you were low end quite a bit. Like, I really felt that low end after maybe, like, I don't know, like early 2010, after like 5 years or whatever, it really was, you know, what you're talking about, Jay, where like you could go to low end like every Wednesday and you would hear some shit, and it would be, you know, it'd be beat shit, but it would be wild. It would be like some electronic shit, some straight hip hop shit, maybe there'd be an MC, maybe there'd be a live band, maybe there'd be like a turntablist, but it was all united. And it really reminded me of like Plastic People in London, which was this other place where you could be like, to have somewhere in the city where you can be like, just go there on Wednesday, you see everybody will be hanging out,
all the heads and the music crews and the music all in the same room, you know. It's very rare that I see that, especially in my city in Munich, you know. So, but yeah, I miss that about London, basically, that you could just, you know, if you went to East London, you could hop across from, at a time car, go to Plastic People, to Mothers 333, to Brick Lane 93 East, and within that same 1 square period mark, you know, like everything was happening there. So you could listen to Mixmaster Morris around the corner, or listen to Tackhead upstairs with Keith LeBlanc and Skip MacDonald, you know, playing live sets, jamming at the top of 333 Club, or, you know, or just hear some bass stuff down in the basement, Forward Nights, or, you know, Co-op, or, you know, there was so much going on at the time when I left London. And since, you know, after that, I'm sure it was still continuing to a certain extent. But as we know, Curtain Road closed down, Plastic People. And again, I guess other venues kind of opened up. And then I'm sure certain individuals made more extensive nights out of having more, you know, on these kind of more festival night, somehow more wider scope of lineup somehow. But in my traditional environment here in Munich, it's not so. Something that we're missing out on. Obviously, only a very few DJs do, like myself, DJ Explicit, Danny Skrilla, and a few other guys that are really opened up to playing experimental and electronic music in the same room, basically. Because for me, it's the same line. I've been in this for 35 years, and I've seen the line just continue, you know, from dub music into drum and bass, into trip hop, out of trip hop into hip hop, from jazz. You know, it's all, for me, it's just one line of music, basically. So I'm not afraid to put that together in the same room. That's just me.
I kind of see the variety when you go to dancing functions, like with like more up tempo, with the dance, like more dance oriented functions with the dancers. Like they play a variety of stuff for the dancers, I noticed, but it's kind of separated though, because like a lot of the dancers don't know about a lot of the beat scene. the beat culture, but when they hear it, it's like a perfect marriage.
Yeah.
So like I be trying to incorporate both a lot of times when I have sets. I have a lot of dancer homies. Raj G, he know the same people. Like their dance studios across the street from the space base, and yeah, we will always have the dancers incorporated. So a lot of people will be like, "Oh, why the dancers dancing to the beats?" It's like you know the dance, man. So it's like
That's what they do, right?
if they combine both worlds, I feel like you get more of that variety at the functions where it's not like boxed in sound. It's like
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was like. You hear a lot of stories even from before, like the Juju parties in LA and like even in London with like the acid jazz thing and all that. It was about dancers. So much of like the older, but the scenes from like the 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of like dancers at the heart of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of them definitely got a little lost along the way. But again, like one thing that I always found interesting in the last decade is that a lot of the parties that I went to, whether it was like in LA or in Montreal or wherever, like there was a lot of people. There was people dancing. People did, like the beat thing. It was like it went from being this like really nerdy thing to like people actually getting down.
Yeah.
And I don't think people give that, like, shout that out too much. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, shoot, my first live PA was actually in Montreal for Turbo Crunk. And it was myself.
Shout out to the Turbo Crunk crew.
6'2", yes. It was myself, Machine Drum, and No Such Thing. Also, Megazord and Lunis, a very young Lunis. Everybody was lit. Like
I remember the videos.
Everybody was lit. Like it's like that. They came to turn up. It wasn't like I'm just gonna sit here and bob my head. Like people, they were lit. So for me, that was my introduction. And you go some places and people were chill, but like that time, like I think people were coming to have a good time and hear a variety of instrumental beats, whether they were a bit more hip hop or a bit more dancey. Like I think people were a bit more open
for sure
to having a good time. But I also want to like really shout out Rebel Music Academy, because I think that internationally, like they really supported the scene and also just putting a lot of us together. And they have one of the best archives of interviews of people that I've ever seen and will ever see. That's 20 years of documentation. And I think, it's still fresh, it just ended last year, but I think that it eventually, unless someone else kind of steps in and has that kind of financial support that they did, that we're gonna feel it as a community. And it's not like I'm even about big commercial people pumping money into the scene, but for genres like the beat scene, it's not like a mainstream. Red Bull was really supportive of the culture, so I'll forever be grateful for what they represented.
Well, I think one of the conversations that the book opens up, Laurent, is what's going to happen to all this. We talked about Illusphere earlier, and we talked about Hoya Hoya and Rosji and a couple of others from Brainfeeder had a release on this on Hoya Hoya on a 12-inch, which was a Manchester label. It came and went. Where's that documented? Where's that kind of lineage going to go? You've obviously done a job with the book in terms of documenting a lot of stuff, but as we all well know, there's so much more. So what are your, ideally, Laurent, what's your kind of world look like over the next 10 years in terms of opening up this beat culture to people? If you were in charge, if you were the president of beat culture, which obviously I'm not saying you're not, what's going to happen with all this stuff? Like Pursuit Grooves has just said, Red Bull Music Academy, who you worked for at the time, had all these interviews going on. Things were being documented. Bandcamp is doing that to a certain extent now, but Bandcamp's remit is huge. What happens next? What happens to all this?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows.
Sort it out, Laurent.
That's a lot of weight you're throwing on him there.
Come on, man.
But I don't know. Nobody does. But it's this thing of like, even to go back to G for a minute, I think one of the big reasons why his passing really hit me as well is I was in the process of writing at the time, and it was this thing of you're like, oh, I can't ask him about that one thing anymore. Like his story's ended, and if myself or yourself, Jamie, when you spoke to him, or anybody else that interviewed him, it's like we all spoke to him at different times, so we all have like a piece of his story. And I know that I asked him about Sketchbook really early on because I knew about it and I was interested, but so like I had that one piece of his story or whatever, and that needs to be available because that's his legacy. And that goes for everybody else like him who's died. I mean, we just lost in the last year alone, we've lost so many people, some who are directly related to this beat culture that we're talking about, some who aren't, but they're all their stories have value. And so like Venice was saying, it's like there was something that existed in the form of the Academy that allowed some of these stories to be preserved. I also really hope that we find a way forward, because we need to find a way forward as a community. I know DB, like you spend a lot of time online talking to people and like engaging, and I think that's part of it too, right? It's like it's not a dead thing. It's like we all need to be engaged with it in various ways. And it's like all these stories, there's an element that's like oral history, right? It's like you tell the stories to people and then they tell the stories to people, so it stays alive that way. But it's definitely important to like preserve it in some way. So I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm going to try and do some stuff because I want to. But it's like,
the only way.
I would love to see a company book to go with your book, Laurent, that is just flyers. It's just all the flyers from the events, because you cover so much,
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of them, and I was thinking about that. And then there's photos. I mean, there's certain people that have documented certain scenes really well. And so, it's all this like, it's just so much to it. And then, I mean, we're talking about BTS. There's like, there's the archive of all the BTS shows that Andrew has left online. And like that has its own value. But then what happens the day that he can't pay for the server or whatever? Like, do we lose that again? How? So hopefully not. But I think, everything that's happening right now in the world is pushing everybody, I think, to think of these things, hopefully to think of these things as more valuable,
Yeah, I found that the when you talked about the MySpace losing everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
think about that. Like, it's gone. Like it's gone. It's so crazy. Like all those things that we were talking about, like all those tracks, everything's like it's gone.
Yeah,
like
crazy.
There's like 5% of it left on the Internet Archive. That's it.
I probably got most of it on CDR.
Yeah, right. We're gonna get paid.
I think Justin's got the other 95% as well.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, another part of the community, Boombox LA. That was a big part of Inca One and them.
Yeah.
That was like some of the first beat shows, like the serious beat shows I was doing. And like they always had everybody from G to everyone on that. So they still documenting stuff as well and active.
Yeah.
So it's like Beat Cinema right now. That's
Beat
like
Cinema, yeah.
It's like for the younger cats, they doing like the beat scene stuff, and they have beat battles for the younger cats. So
is Hezekiah still doing Beat Society? Is it still running?
Think so. I don't think so.
He did a beat society like maybe 2 years ago. I did a beat.
That's what I thought.
And them.
Yeah, I want to also shout out my man Henry. 92 BPM.
Yeah. Big shout, Henry.
For Toronto, I was actually just chatting with him a couple of days ago, just letting him know that we were doing this, and shout out to him. Like, I met him while I was still living in New York, but like when I moved to Toronto, like I knew he was the cat who was bringing everybody into town for the Toronto shows, and his blog 92 BPM pretty much covered everything for that time period. So shout out to him.
Yeah.
And also like there are some B events like still going on. Like, I'm part of the Loop Sessions umbrella, There are a number of different branches. I help co-run Loop Sessions Toronto, and we pretty much, it's monthly. We have a vinyl that everyone samples from. They have a certain amount of hours to make a beat, and like the beat culture still lives and it's still strong. It's just that the avenues in which people are communicating and sharing is just different. But I know just as many up and coming beat makers and folks, and maybe even more so now. It's just that how we're all communicating is just different.
Yeah.
Dibiase, with what you
sure.
do on Twitter with the beat battles and the flips and everything, is that quite a global kind of is it quite global, the people that join into that, or is it quite local?
Yeah, it's like from Japan to all kind of people participating. And I want to try to get my Twitch channel active and just try to showcase all of the submissions and even possibly get it to the point where I have prizes for people that participate. And just, it's pretty fun though, it's inspiring. I discover a lot of new people, man. It's like it might be some people with 4 followers online and second guessing themselves, like how I used to second guess myself, and they have like some amazing music and they just be needing that little push, man. And
That's dope.
A Pepsi not stepping up now in place of RBMA with the lo-fi beat battles. Maybe we could have some really chilled beat battles with the Pepsi beats.
Oh man,
going on. Is that not the way forward? Is that not the future?
Is that a thing?
Well, what I think I actually missed it, but I saw it on your Twitter. But is it that Pepsi have used some lo-fi beats in an advert? Is that what's happening?
No, they had a playlist. They had like a YouTube like a YouTube stream, and it was like, it seemed like it was a mockery of like lo-fi, because they were rapping about Pepsi, like all the lyrics was about Pepsi and stuff, but like a lot of the lo-fi community was getting offended by it. But it's like,
big shout out to Honor for that Coca-Cola anthem slot.
Oh yeah.
He did for the
Olympics. For the Olympics.
Yeah, for the Olympics, he got the anthem. Was the theme tune for the advert, man. It was massive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
They had to redo the whole thing though, because they couldn't clear the samples. So
exactly.
Oh really?
Like if there's no way they would have been like, the records that he sampled were so trash. There's no way they would have been able to
get that sound quality.
I do like the way that Onra flips it back to kind of Slum Village. He always wears still his influences on his sleeve and just says, but to work with T3, he was like, and then carried on that relationship, and then he became his own kind of, Onra almost became his own kind of thing, because he'd do like these beats, then the boogie sort of stuff, then he'd do like the 90s R&B sort of stuff. And I like that about him in terms of, he's not afraid to do that. He's kind of brave enough to do that, but he's got the backing of All City, for example, to do that. So that is encouraging that even over the last kind of 5 years or so, there are labels there. And because it's so hard to have a label now, that there are labels there to kind of get that out there.
Yeah. And his beats just slam anyway, right? So I mean, that whole Long Distance album, that brought me back to a period where I started to collect music. I was collecting the SOS Band and Change, and this was my first step up in music back in the early 80s. So to hear that just beefed up again and put out there, I was hyped about that. So big up for that. For
sure. I mean, listen, that's what we should all strive for, is to be able to express ourselves and not worry if people think that we sound totally different, or why don't you make that type of beats that you used to make? Like you should be able to just express yourself as a creator and not worry about having to repeat what you did before. I mean, you want that kind of freedom.
No, I think like you have to step up, and you have to, to be in music, you have to do it, right? You have to kind of start somewhere. And even if you're following someone, you generally start drifting off and finding your own direction, I'm guessing, over time. Because in the beginning, I think even with Steve, people were like, oh, he's just doing Dilla stuff or whatever. But then, I mean, in the earlier segments of the tapes that I heard, the July tapes specifically back in 2004 or 5. You could say it was of that somehow, because I think he did Fall in Love as well, his own version. But then he just went off into a whole new different time realm, like the BPMs had changed. He was flipping up from 85 to double beat or whatever. And so obviously he found his angle somehow. And I think like for loads of people who I've been listening to from the very beginning have done completely different production today, so, and I think that's the way. You have to start somewhere. You have to do it, You can't just be afraid of setting yourself there and trying to say, "Oh, I'm following Dibiase, or I'm following Take, or Kutma style of music, or whatever." You have to start somewhere. Like reggae artists that I know like especially the ones that came off of Low High Tech or London Potty, whatever. They were just reggae heads. They were doing reggae music. In the end, they ended up being hip hop stars, out of London. So, and I think all the guys from the early days who started off doing one directional got caught up in experiences or ideas along the way, totally flipped their idea, So when I was listening to the early Mark Max stuff, like the Captain Kirk, for instance, which was kind of early ravey stuff, and then you listen to the 4 Aero album, 2 pages, it's like, all right, okay, so they went from this kind of hard angled raw recordings to this really smoothed out composition somehow, with much more structure, more musicianship. So you have to start somewhere, right? So
you find your voice eventually. It's like that's what you used to say. You just got to have your voice, and to stand out.
It only comes from practicing and doing it. I mean, I feel exactly the same even with the book. For the longest time, it was like I didn't know how to like write this, and then I decided to write it the way that felt the most natural to me by following the music. And so it's not, it's not trying to be, you could say you have to imitate, you have to find your own way. And I think all the people whose music we all love, whether they're beat heads or not, or whatever, there is that element of moving forward, and you make mistakes, and you start, and you can, you know what I mean? You might not like everything, but the point is that there's constant movement. There has to be constant movement.
And you can't separate the influence. You have to be influenced by something to start somewhere, right?
There's nothing pure. There's nothing that's manifested out of thin air. No. Fucking lie. Anyway.
That's the problem with some of these newer genres. They're acting, they just started out of the thin air. It's just like, okay, 2015, we just came up with this whole celebration.
But I think, to me, that
started now.
It's like we were saying. I think it's that thing of the history. That's why it's important to find a way to make the history like stick. I always feel like, I don't know. I'm not trying to be like old man shout to the cloud, but there's that element of like educating people, or not educating them in the sense that better, but in saying, here's
is what happened.
You got access to this.
I was a part of it, and then you can find out about it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not trying to beat down on them. You're just saying this is what happened. There's a whole bunch of shit, like, and then if we preserve those stories, then more people can find out about it, and hopefully they can make their own. They build on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the best thing that can happen.
Which is all I think any beat maker producer would say, that is, don't try and emulate me. Do your thing, learn your craft, and go for it. And that's
what he said. Do you?
Well, the book is very inspiring to read, Laurent, because it encompasses so much. I needed to listen to stuff as I was reading it, and I was starting to think about, oh man, I need to, like, as you say in the book, you need to put a playlist together for this, but there's so much that's not actually, you can't get hold of. So did you say you were going to start working on a playlist? How on earth are you going to do that?
Kutma got all of that stuff.
Yeah.
No, YouTube, like, the only place that most of this exists is on YouTube.
Okay.
I want to say like 90% of what's mentioned in the book is on YouTube, but like, it might not be there tomorrow. there was stuff that was there when I started writing that wasn't there at the time I finished writing.
Yeah.
Somebody would like put it down, or they would make a claim against it. But you know, YouTube. I mean, look, I found footage of that SpaceX, the Black Pocket launch party at Plastic People.
Yeah.
It's like D-Bridge, SpaceX, Charlie Dark, Hudmo, like it's crazy. It's like craziest lineup.
Damn.
And there's like some shaky cam footage of that on YouTube. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like the vibe is like so incredible. And I wish there was footage of like Sketchbook, because there isn't. But like there's footage of like early low end stuff. There's footage of like some Turbo Kronk stuff has survived. You can find a few things here and there.
I think Rob's working on something. I think 6'2". I think he's working on an archive for Turbo Kronk as well.
Good. I hope he is. I know he archived a bunch of the flyers and there's photos.
Yeah.
And I know like there's photos of the bridge burner there's video of the bridge burner parties, which were like the big parties that they threw up in the summer. Those are incredible. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put some stuff together. I don't know what shape it's gonna be like. The idea is to like put all the stuff that didn't make it into the book out into the world so that it can live as a little archive and hopefully help these conversations continue to happen, you know, because they need to happen. And then, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. It's just find a way to make those kind of conversations around archiving and keeping the history alive happen, because that's what I'm really interested in.
Okay, well, I guess before we wrap it up, is there anything else that anyone would like to dip into?
Dibiase, when's the next album, bruv? Need that fire.
Oh man, I'm having little computer issues right now, but I'm like just strictly on hardware right now, but trying to wrap up something like before this week, but it's not looking like it's gonna happen. But,
okay, I wish you luck on that.
Yeah,
Vanessa, what's happening? And Vanessa, can we expect something?
I've got a track coming out next week on Moxie Presents.
Oh, nice.
DJ Moxie, nice. She's got an EP dropping on the 6th, November 6th. And I've got a track on there. And yeah, I'm always working on stuff. I think I'm going to aim for year, but I'm not trying to rush anything. But I'm always working.
That's good to hear. I'm looking forward to listening to it. I'm actually doing some music with Homeboy Sandman, Malik, and just getting all the material to, because at the moment it's just everyone's just swapping stems at the moment. Vocals here, bass lines there. You know, I'm doing the drums and programming and stuff. So I've got like about 27 tracks at the moment. But so me and
Homeboy Sandman's drive and motivation I find really inspirational. And last time I interviewed him, he was just about to leave Stone's Throw, but didn't tell me. Then announced it the day after, sort of thing. But he was with Idan that night, which was an amazing show, like Idan and Homeboy Sandman, and that was the culture right there. You know, Idan doing his thing, Homeboy Sandman on the microphone, and then next week, right? I'm with Mellow Music Group now. We're doing this. You know, Bandcamp is where I'm making my money, sort of thing. Which everyone, you know, over lockdown, obviously that's been everyone's kind of bread and butter, and shout out Bandcamp Fridays and the company, what they're doing there.
Definitely.
But his drive is kind of through everything and through, you know, whatever lack of people coming to shows, lack of sales, then having good sales, good amounts of people coming to shows. He's just kept on and kept on and kept on.
Yeah,
and
it's persistent.
It's crazy to be able to do that as an artist. I think is throughout the past kind of 15 years. When there are other things that get big, you know. Shout out to all the artists. Shout out to you guys.
Yeah, big shout out to everyone that's putting compilations together, trying to hold their clubs and music bars together at the moment, because it's it's terrible. Big shout out to Chris Dusty and DJ Explicit. We've just put the third one out recently. I dropped a track on there as well. It's coming out, I think, on next Bandcamp Friday. But I know lots of people are just putting compilations together at the moment just to try to get money to pay into their club venues, because I don't know what's happening with that. over the next few months.
Wow.
Jay, we've got Mecha83 in the comments saying, when's your album out?
Oh.
Instead of hiding classics on compilations.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm working on it at the moment. Like I say, with Malik Amir, Crumpler is a poet and rapper as well. Really adore him at the moment because he's obviously inspiring me to do more. We're swapping files backwards and forwards. Just got the Homeboy Sandman track back. Got Chima Anya from London. He's going to do a track. Charlie Abibi from the Inner Tribes with Inkswell. She's going to do some backing singing. You know, just calling on lots of friends. I've got Francis from Incognito playing bass. Ivan Marian, who's EMAR bass player. He just dropped some bass line on this kind of track that I'm doing at the moment. So I've got like I say, about 27 tracks, but it's obviously like stems backwards and forwards. So I'm hoping for next year, early next year, and then I'll have a whole list of favorite remixers, Dibiase and a girl called Pursuit Grooves, maybe possibly in the listing.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. So on that at the moment,
Cool. All right.
Okay, so the book is available now.
It's available now from the
Available now
Go
on
buy
Velocity Press. Buy the
officially
book.
everywhere else on November 6th.
Congratulations again, man.
Congratulations, yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, really inspiring
Yeah,
read. I look forward to a reference work, though, an encyclopedia. You know, nothing less than that. So I look forward to more appendices, whether they be digital or physical.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We'll all reconvene IRL once this craziness is over.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody stay safe and thanks for showing interest in the book, and go check all these incredible people's music out.
Yep.
And wear a mask and stay safe.
Or a mask. Shouts to everyone who joined us tonight. Shouts to Reform.
Big shout out to everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks,
Thank
Stevie.
you, guys. Thank you all.
Oh man. Thank
All
you.
right. I think the producer is going to take us out of the